Welcome to Quality Time with MoreSteam. I am your host, Dan Swartout. Today, I am honored to be joined by one of the true giants in the field of lean and operational excellence, Peter Ward. I'm not going to take any more time with this introduction because I'm so excited to bring you this conversation. Let's get right into my conversation with Peter Ward. We are lucky enough today, truly lucky, to be joined by Peter Ward. Peter is a professor, Emeritus of Operations Management at The Ohio State University, my alma mater. He is the chair of the Lean Enterprise Institute. He is a Shingo Prize Award winner. We are on the Mount Rushmore of lean right here. Peter, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for that kind introduction, and it's really my pleasure to be here.
Peter, you're originally from, you grew up in Long Island, went to school in Massachusetts, and you've been at Ohio State now for about 35 years or so. What are some of the differences you found from living on the East Coast and living in the Midwest?
Well, I consider myself a Midwesterner these days. After 35 years, I think that happens. But what I really enjoy about the Midwest is that a little more space, a little bit less congestion, and what have you. But I think people are pretty much the same everywhere. At least that's been my impression. So I don't find big contrasts. One thing I miss is a hill once in a while. Living in Columbus, we're pretty flat. Well, on the other hand, when you're taking a walk, you don't get out of breath.
How did you end up at Ohio State? What brought you here?
Well, I had just gotten my doctorate rather late in life, and Ohio State had a very, very good program in operations management, which was my field, and it seemed like a really good move professionally. My wife was also a professor, and she found the job that was just right for her at the University of Dayton. So we figured out a way to have at least commutable arrangement. And also, everyone had told me that Columbus is just a wonderful place to raise children. And we had, at that time, a new baby. And we were really wanted to find a spot that would be wonderful for him and eventually for his sister.
You've done some really remarkable things at Ohio State. Some really revolutionary things that have impacted the entire field. For example, you started teaching lean at the business school, in the business school curriculum at Ohio State. What inspired you to do that, considering that, lean practices, lean methodology was traditionally taught at engineering schools?
Mm-hmm.
What inspired you to bring that into the business school, and how did you adapt the curriculum for business?
Yeah. Well, first, that's just a great question. So first of all, I'd have to say that back when I started teaching lean at Ohio State, which was in the late 90s, there was not much effort in engineering schools either. It was pretty barren territory. So as a strategic thinker, I learned that going to space where there's not much competition is always a good idea if you made it work, and that
Right.
seemed good. But getting to the inspiration. So I had worked for a number of years before I went to get my PhD. And part of their work was in manufacturing engineering and really working with processes. And that was in the early 1980s. And at that time, there was lots and lots of talk about the shrinking manufacturing base in the United States on Southern and also there was the beginnings of information about why Japan seemed to be doing so well. And there were some books out about, we didn't call it lean in those days. We called it Japanese manufacturing techniques. And, I fiddled with those a little bit in work and without a lot of success, but I saw a lot of promise. But the big thing was that I just really, observed
Right.
that we invested a lot in technology, but that the returns were much more to small changes in process. And that if anything we could do to achieve flow was really much more valuable than just making things faster that piled up in work in process inventory. And, that was, to me, I think sounds very ordinary today, but to me it was a really big idea.
Hmm.
And it served as inspiration for a lot of the work that I have done since then. Um, Moving on a few years in terms of the inspiration story, I had an opportunity to work with lots of companies at our Center for Operational Excellence. Back then, it was the Center for Excellence in Manufacturing Management, and at about that time, the late '90s, um, these companies from a variety of industries were all very interested in lean, and
Hmm.
they wanted to know more about lean. So I kind of took it on myself to learn more. Already had an interest, but not a whole lot of knowledge, certainly not any scholarship. And as part of those efforts, I was invited to join a board at Ford Motor Company, where they worked with suppliers to try to make suppliers leaner. And my colleagues on that board were, some really big thinkers in lean, and also executives from tier one Ford suppliers.
Hmm.
And there was a lot of discussion since I was the university professor in the group. There was a lot of discussion about the university graduates not really being prepared to enter their world. And they made some references to rework and what have you, and thinking about our students. So I really made the challenge to my colleagues there to help me teach lean, help me develop a lean curriculum, and I really leaned on them an awful lot, and we offered a class to MBA students, an elective class to MBA students, and it was a big hit right from the start. And it's a popular class, and pretty soon we had a couple of them, and uh, I was able to take on a bit more of the teaching load myself, depend less on my colleagues from executive college, and that, and the inspiration was really fulfilled by the popularity of the course and the fact that students who took it were going out and getting jobs, and
Right.
the lean experience that they had in their retro program was really made them unique and therefore more successful in the job market than we might otherwise expect. So that was really the deal. So it was very much driven by sort of being in the right place at the right time and observing a need that had been not expressed very clearly and certainly not um, um, insisted on by anybody in the university world, whether in engineering or in business.
Now, how did the early adoption of teaching lean in the business school at Ohio State influence the development of similar programs at other colleges and universities?
Mm.
Did people see this and reach out to you and ask you, how did you do this? How did that come about?
Yeah, so we had there were it's interesting the way that it developed was I had a lean course and there was and other people were starting to develop lean courses as well, and uh, I always thought that it was going to be it somehow had to be made programmatic. It had to
Hmm.
go beyond just the one eccentric professor thinking about we train these young people and figure out a way to do that. Um, so we had to get, somehow had to become a program, part of a program, and really embedded. And what I saw were, I don't know if they're imitators or just other people with interests like mine, were developing lean courses around the country, but without that programmatic aspect. And I think one of the things that differentiated what we did at Ohio State from other programs around the country is the fact that we were able to successfully embed it in the program. We can talk a little bit more about that later. But the sort of breakthrough in terms of popularizing lean among faculty around the country and eventually around the world was we had with LEI's help, the
Right.
Enterprise Institute's help. We put on a conference where we invited all the people we knew that were teaching lean and talks about how we could have somehow organize our activities and learn from each other and what have you. And that effort continues to this day. And it is a way for very ad hoc in most cases, but a way for professors to learn from each other, to get excited, to share course material and what have you. But again, largely without the programmatic piece that I think is still largely missing, and that in terms of disappointment, that is a disappointment that I have.
Peter, you used a word a couple times recently. You used the word embedded, and
Yeah.
that's a word that has come up a lot during this podcast, just talking about the lean space. Can you talk about the significance of the word embedded, what that means in this space?
Yeah, well, I think in terms of sort of academic training, and I think a lot of this applies to industry as well, and certainly a lot of what I learned was directly drawn, from industry. But I think in terms of actually making a difference, it's got to be more than a course. There has to be reinforcement. There has to be some sort of certification or recognition that the student has completed something. And it also has to be supported by other work. So one of the things I was able to do at Ohio State to help embed lean was to first move from being solely in the MBA program to also having it in offering courses in our undergraduate program. We had a lot more students and a lot more minds to change and a lot of people to become excited about lean. And then we so we had elective courses in the undergraduate program, which eventually became required courses for operations managers and operations majors, excuse me. And we also were able to get lean into into the introductory course in operations management in both the MBA program and also our undergraduate program, so that every student, whether they're an accounting major or a finance major, whatever major they were learning something about process, and we're learning, for example, I could say at one time, I'm not sure this is still true, but I could say at one time that everybody who got a degree from Fisher College of Business had drawn a value stream map. They knew how to do that, and there were certain tools that they learned. But more important, they learned those lessons about flow and the importance of flow and systematic thinking. And I think that so when I talk about embedding, that's kind of what I mean. More than just the flyby course, there's really some a commitment on the part of the institution to the ideas and teaching those ideas.
And I think that's right too. In industry, to make significant changes, these processes, these concepts have to be embedded. It can't just be a one-off, right? All right.
Yeah, they can't. We can't have uh, professionals go and sit through 80 hours of MoreSteam or whatever, and expect them without any application
Right.
to really have it stick. And it's kind of the same in the sense of the academic part of it. And of course, that's also a challenge in academia is to provide practical experience. And we tried various ways to do that with our efforts in Lean and also in Six Sigma.
You mentioned Six Sigma, and then after teaching Lean for a while, you started incorporating teaching Six Sigma as well. How
Yeah.
did you go about that? Is that when you kind of started to make the connection with MoreSteam?
Yeah. So what I really did is I wanted to teach Six Sigma because it was very popular, remains popular, but it was so again thinking about our students and getting jobs, saying that they knew something about Six Sigma, which was probably going to help them, and that was
Right.
as well as the merits of the thinking and the program itself. And what I really did was I faced a problem. Okay, so that at that time, black belt body of knowledge was 4 weeks of classroom training, usually over 4 months, but a week a month for 4 months. And that certainly wasn't going to translate to to academic classroom where we didn't have that kind of, we certainly couldn't ask students to spend that kind of time on one part of their curriculum. But Bill and MoreSteam had sort of cracked that one in figuring out a way to deliver online training, black belt body of knowledge, in was it 140 hours? I think 140 hours of online training. At the time we did it, I believe that was a thing. So what we could do is we could use MoreSteam and ask the students to spend that 140 hours online and augment that with a semester or at that time a quarter of which is about 40 hours of classroom training. So combined, we could get that black belt body of knowledge, so inculcated in the minds of our students, and then we had another course where they worked on a project and in teams in a company, and that was to give them a bit of practical experience. So what we had then was, sort of thanks to Bill, we were able to take the really hard part, which was the figuring out how to put a curriculum together that would cover black belt body of knowledge without possible demands on the students. It's a tough course, but nonetheless, they were able that the 140 hours is tough enough, but they're able to get through that. And I did quite a bit of research at the time. It's a long time ago now, of course, but did quite a bit of research on sort of what was a respectable green belt. And everybody agreed that, gee, you really have a black belt body of knowledge where the students were tested on it, and giving them a chance to work on a team on a meaningful project in a company was an honest green belt, and that's what we did. And then eventually used the same logic in the undergraduate program and a very popular Six Sigma pair of courses and both the principles and the project in undergraduate program. Undergraduates generally work with nonprofits, which I think is a nice addition as well. Certainly, where nonprofits need a lot of help,
Yeah.
and the students have. They make me so proud when I go and look at their presentations and sort of how they making a difference in
That's awesome.
by applying process knowledge, and solving problems.
That's awesome. And I got to say, you took me back a little bit by mentioning quarters, because when I was at Ohio State, we were on quarters, and I think we were
Yeah.
one of the last universities in the country that was still on quarters.
Yeah, there's still some holdouts now. It is, it's funny. It is, but the exposure is almost the same in a quarter
Mhm.
a semester. But so I never saw the big advantage of going to semesters. But I had no voice in that decision, and it seems to work fine with semesters too. So someone once told
You
me that the important thing is that you change once in a while from semesters to quarters or quarters to semesters, because that causes everybody to review their curriculum and freshen up their stuff, which is kind of funny, but I think that's probably true.
I did like the late September start of the academic year.
Yeah,
When I was coming out of high school, I was one of the last one of my friends to start school. It was great.
yeah. There's advantages. In any case, I think you can find pluses and minuses to everything, and it all works. So.
Now, you went ahead and launched the first master's program in operational excellence. It's the first of its kind. What inspired you to create that program, and what gap did you see that it filled?
Yeah. So, I if you remember, I spoke about the group of professional college who were
Right.
executives in these companies, and the one thing they said as they were helping me with my MBA class was that, yeah, this class is good, but it's not enough. You need a master's degree, and at the time I said, please let me figure out how to make a successful class. But it always stuck in my mind that there'd be value in that. And again, I had this Center for Operational Excellence at Ohio State that I worked with, and had a chance to talk to a lot of, excuse me, a lot of executives there, and got their take on it. And, would this be somebody? Would you want to send, an up and coming manager to a program like this? And I said, well, it kind of depends on how much time and what have you. So there was a lot of interest, and it was important, to get the design right, in terms of making it available to people who had real jobs that were demanding and
Right.
and that was so there was that the big challenges were kind of design challenges, and we tried a lot of things, got a lot of advice, and worked on putting together a program that would be available to the needed audience, and rigorous enough to be to merit a master's degree from Ohio State
Hmm.
University, which was, and we had to convince a lot of people in the university and even outside of the university, going to at that time, the Board of Regents in the state of Ohio, that this was a worthwhile venture, and caused us to think hard and about how we design the program and what have you. But the thought about a master's program in lean, really, that the germ of that idea, really came from those in the early days when I was just developing the first course, and those executives, colleagues who were, so generous with their time and thinking, just telling me that was really what was needed, and that, that tested that with lots of others, but it certainly proved to be true, and we've had, for more than 15 years now, we've had a successful program with students from many industries, um, taking going through the program and working on leading a project in their own company, and over the course of the year, and so doing, really apply a lot of what they learn, and also hone their leadership skills, and what have you. They have a coach that they work with. And the idea was to try to, in some ways, replicate, what Toyota does in terms of, a mentor learning process. We wanted to provide that as well, and do it as we never said we do it better. We want to do an adequate job of preparing people to be a leader in their organization, using lean thinking and practice as the mechanism.
A couple times you mentioned already the Center for Operational Excellence, and I know that Peg Pennington, who we've had on the show before, has talked a lot about that on the show.
Yeah.
So listeners are aware of the Center for Operational Excellence. How has your work with the Center for Operational Excellence shaped your views on how academic institutions like Ohio State can contribute to industry advances in lean practices?
Oh, it's been enormous. There's the easiest thing in the world as a professor is to stay on the very comfortable campus that we have and work on work on our teaching and our research and problems that we find interesting and what have you. But a lot of times the problems that we find interesting are not necessarily problems that people really have to solve. And with the Center for Operational Excellence, from the very beginning, the design of the thing was to get faculty talking to leaders in organizations who had operational experiences to share. So it has always been. I always felt like we learned and gained so much more from the relationships than any of our members did, because we got that the constant ear to the ground that was provided. So, and again, I mean, I think that when we started our journey towards turning the Center for Excellence in Manufacturing Management into a more focused operational excellence center, it was really driven by by our members. Their interests, their problems, their understanding of what Lean and Six Sigma and operational excellence more generally could do for them was really what drove that whole move. So I mean, I think that's been important. Also, the Center for Operational Excellence is always served to as a check on our curriculum, to make sure that the curriculum remains relevant.
Right.
And that is so we know what we know what our members tell us, and if the members are telling us things that aren't in sync with what we're teaching, we probably should change what we're teaching.
I've mentioned at the beginning your numerous roles. One is as chair of the Lean Enterprise Institute. And how do you see the Lean Enterprise Institute, LEI's role in advancing lean thinking globally, especially in industries outside of manufacturing? Because you talked about the multiple industries that are using lean principles.
Yeah, so I think the challenge is not so much industry, right? So I think we've seen that there's examples of people exhibiting high levels of lean practice and lean thinking in across lots of industries. I think our challenges are a lot of them are around technology,
Right.
and a lot of the old guard lean folks like me are not technology's kind of passed us by in a lot of ways, and there are however lots of young people who are working in this area and are showing us how to sort of do better in terms of taking those lean principles that I think are timeless, and applied them in a context that is, all about artificial intelligence and, the amazing things that we can do with code and that, the principle of really, uh, having a process, and understanding that process and resolve and all that. I mean, all those that lean thinking kind of imagery, applies just as much in a world that is dominated by software.
Uh-huh.
But excuse me, but it's not so clear. And I think telling those stories is important. The other thing I think is terribly important is the idea of incorporating design into our processes. Remember, we talked earlier about the fact that
Right.
to me that having a system and what have you is so important. Well, certainly design is part of the system, and even in when we talked about we think about what Jim Olek and his colleagues wrote about in The Machine That Changed the World.
Uh-huh.
Even then, the system they described, design was part of that. And, I think in some ways we've not given that as much emphasis as we should. So being on the, on the front end of thinking about a product or a service, is really important. And it's something that, that we're working on very hard at LEI. So Jim Morgan, who is just an amazing lead thinker, does a design brief that is widely available for free through the LEI network and LEI website. And he talks, and Jim is a great thinker in terms of incorporating design into the entire lean system. Has served in the executive capacity at a couple of very big companies where he did exactly that, and he shares that with us. And I think that that is really important. I think so much of design thinking applies directly to software development.
Uh-huh.
And that is, again, just such an important part of what we do, and industrially today. That we've got to we just have to keep our eye on the ball. So keeping lean fresh is, I think is problem that we've got to solve. It's like that's what we do. We solve problems. So I think we have. So a lot of it is communicating and understanding better. What young managers are facing, and how do we help them? I think that's a challenge that we face, and it's a great challenge. I think it applies to Six Sigma just as much as lean, and I kind of don't differentiate that much between lean and Six Sigma anymore.
Right.
The days of the battle of the giants, I think, is over, and we can all agree that there's a lot of good thinking that is needed to solve problems. That's what we do.
I want to talk about your Shingo Prize in a little bit. That's so exciting. But when I told people and people found out that you, Peter Ward, were going to be on the show, naturally people wanted to pick your brain. So this is a question that I have been asked to ask you because people here are curious to hear what you think about this. Now, how would you compare the value and impact of incremental improvements versus disruptive changes in a lean context? For example, Tesla pursues large-scale design-oriented innovations like casting the entire front end of a car in one mold, while Toyota focuses on continuous incremental improvements. How do you think these different approaches align with lean principles, and in what scenarios might one approach be more effective than the other?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, this is age-old. I mean, even before we were talking about lean. We were talking about incremental improvement versus, the big bang
Right.
kind of stuff. And, there's been some research in it, and it seems like, usually the argument is, well, gee, about half of the value comes from incremental improvement and half comes from, step improvements. And I would say this, that lean is, we always talk about Kaizen,
Hmm.
which is, continuous improvement.
Hmm.
But there's another Japanese word in there, kaikaku, that it means big bang improvement,
Hmm.
large improvement, transformational improvement, which has always been part of the other vocabulary, but less used. I think what made lean distinctive was that, particularly in the West, right? In the West, we had a history of making giant leaps.
Hmm.
Sometimes we hit the the cliff, and sometimes not. But giant leaps were the way. And what Lean suggested was that, oh, look, these people at Toyota and other places like Toyota do small changes every day, and that adds up to being worth a lot at the end of the year. And isn't this is so different? So I think that very difference really sort of provided us with the thought process. But Lean's all about incremental improvement. Well, I think it is all about incremental improvement, but it's also all about um, big steps as well. And in the situation you're talking about with it's actually a good one with what Tesla's doing. Um, it is new new approach. Uh, offers lots of opportunities for big improvements. You're in a mature phase. Typically incremental improvement is where you're going to find your your most meaningful improvement. However, if you just focus on incremental improvement, your neighbor is gonna leapfrog you.
Right.
So it's that kaikaku always has to be part of the story. There always has to be people thinking about how can we do this in a revolutionary, different way. And so I think that's the story. I don't think I've addressed the question very well, but I think I've maybe raised some issues without answering your question directly. I do think both are really important. I think that with that 50-50, half the improvement comes from incremental, half comes from step increases. That proportion is about right. Of course, it plays out over many years, right? So there'll be periods where we do, innovation is really very, very important to us. And in our industry, innovation is, major. But eventually the opportunities for innovation tail off. Incremental improvement becomes much more important. And there's a lot of research that really supports that.
I think you answered the question straight on, especially as you talk about if you only do the incremental improvements, your competitor is going to blow by you when they do the big bang improvement. Maybe some of it doesn't work, but maybe some of it hits in such a way that it disrupts the entire industry. I think you
Yeah.
have to be focused on both.
Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't mean, we can do two things at once, right?
Right.
We don't have to be exclusively incremental or exclusively big bang. We can do both, and companies try to do both, and not always. I think it takes there's some really smart people have thought about this a lot, and in terms of organizational design and what have you. How do you manage doing both? That's that it certainly applies in in lean thinking, as well as we're not immune from that difficulty in
Right.
managing to think about big change and incremental at the same time. I think to be a truly successful company, you have to do that.
Peter, you won a Shingo Prize. Was it in 2004?
Yeah, I think that's probably right. 2004, 2005. Yeah.
The Shingo Prize, could you explain what that is and how you found out you won it?
Yeah. So there's Shingo has a research prize every year. Usually it goes to books, but it has gone to some articles over time. Uh, and they've got a group that somehow judges. I don't know. I'm not sure how the process works. They have a group that somehow judges offerings, and somehow our Rushton Shah, my co-author, and our paper was nominated, and despite being a paper as opposed to a book, managed to win the prize. But what was really more important than the Shingo Prize in terms of moving lean forward in universities was that there was very, very little research in lean that was lean related topics that was respectable from a scholarly perspective. Okay, and this paper we wrote was an empirical paper. We had some data. We actually had data from Industry Week that collected a bunch of data, and we used that, and we were able to define lean in a way that was measurable and consistent and what have you, which allowed other researchers, as well as ourselves, to do more work going forward, in a way that was, scientific in terms of some social science sense anyway. And so it kind of made lean respectable to study, because it was a good journal, Operations Management, which is a good journal, and we had a follow-up paper that didn't win the Shingo Prize, but it was also very highly cited paper, and allowed other researchers to cite. The way it works is you really got to, which comes first, the chicken or the egg. You've got to cite other respectable papers to get considered generally yourself. So all that was good, and I think that the sort of close the circle. The only way lean was going to last in as a teaching area was that if we had professors who were able to study it, and so it had to be part of it had to become part of the canon of management, and the way to do that was for scholars to begin to write papers that are refereed and scholarly papers, and somehow this arcane kind of practice allows the much more visible teaching to flourish, because you can't we're a university, we can't just teach without research,
Right.
so that was a really, really important element. So the prize was fun and what have you, but what was much more important was this sort of getting this into getting lean into a respectable journal, and be able to follow up on that. More important, have others be able to write papers that were considered okay, because the ground had been broken. Not to say that we were the only ones who had done anything, but it was kind of a marker. And remains a very, very highly cited paper. I get gets cited all the time because it was seminal work.
The name of your paper was Lean Manufacturing: Context, Practice, Bundles, and Performance.
Yeah.
Seminal work, as you said. The paper emphasizes some main practice bundles: just in time, total quality management, total preventative maintenance, and human resource management. What was the intent behind that research? And can you talk about, you mentioned already the impact, obviously still cited, and that's always excited every time you get a citation. Always
Yeah.
exciting because you're contributing to the body of knowledge. So
Yeah.
what was the intent behind the research beyond just building research? What was the intent as far as this is what we're trying to demonstrate?
What we wanted to do was really describe lean objectively, because previously it had been sort of, it's like, I know it when I see it,
Right.
there or marked by performance. So that, so we read The Machine That Changed the World, for example, which was amazing work, amazing.
Right.
But, what they defined lean as these companies that were mostly Japanese, they were able to make a car in, much faster with less space and, fewer, smaller head count, and, ta-da, ta-da, ta-da. So based on performance, we say this is lean. What we wanted to do, and the MMA described descriptively, said what they observed in the plants, and so I'm not for a minute trying to diminish that. And it's important. I think that was really, really important piece of work. What we wanted to do was say, okay, well, never mind. Can we find a way to describe lean so that we can distinguish between lean practitioners and those who are not lean? And by the way, link that to performance. So first thing was to discriminate between the lean producers and non-lean producers. And then the second step was to say, okay, are the lean producers different in terms of performance? And in fact, they were. So I would never argue that it was putting on my scholarly hat here. I would never describe it as a perfect paper. I don't. I have to say I haven't read it in a long time. But the last time I read it, I said, "Oh, June, that was change a few things." But
We're always our own worst critics.
yeah. But the idea was it was a way. So we had a place to scholars had a place to a toehold. Okay, we know somebody has shown that this is what lean is. Okay, so now I can go out and measure other companies by the same criteria and see if they're see if it holds up. And then what are the performance implications? And what if he did more? What if we found another dimension that was important? And that so it was useful from that perspective. And that's really what we're trying to do. So we had that was our idea, was to really define lean. And I think we defined it better actually in a later article, but nonetheless, the idea of having a scientifically decent way to define this thing, because we know when we go to companies, is it lean or not? I don't know. They're all different. They're there's certain things that seem to hold true. Can we somehow be more specific than that? And that's what we try to do. We try to be specific using data that were collected by a third party and reasonably checked it.
Peter Ward won a Shingo Prize. Maybe one day I'll win a prize for this short break. MoreSteam's enterprise process improvement platform includes the tools, training, and software you need to transform your organization into a problem-solving powerhouse. Join the ranks of Fortune 500 companies that trust MoreSteam for their enterprise process improvement. Our integrated approach featuring training, project tracking and execution, simulations, and statistical analysis empowers your team to create a culture where structured problem solving becomes second nature. Visit MoreSteam.com to learn more. And now back to my conversation with Peter Ward. Peter, academics, industry, Lean Enterprise Institute, you've accomplished so much in your career. Looking back over your career, what accomplishment are you most proud of and why?
So I would say that my baby is the master's program in operational excellence. That I really feel like that was a program that made a difference in people's lives. Particularly the students, the graduates, who many of whom I continue to stay in touch with, and who benefited from it. But I know their organizations benefited from it, and society benefited from it. So I feel like there was a contribution. And I have to say that I had lots of help along the way. So I would never say that it was although it was my program in the sense that I take possessive pride in it. Never would have done it without Peg. Peg was just amazing helper on that, and Gary Butler, who is since retired, was an amazing contributor, and that and others as well. So I mean, it just was a lot of people working very, very hard to get it done. I mean, usually when you're proud of something, it was hard. MBOE was hard to do. It was there was a lot of introducing a new program in a university, in a big university like Ohio State, particularly, is a lot of work. But we had the vision, and we kind of completed that vision. And it, although I'm no longer actively involved with MBOE, it continues to thrive today, and adapt and get better. So it's all good.
Peter Ward, what a legacy you have left in the world of Lean, on society as a whole. It has been a true honor to have you on the show. This has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. And I hope you'll come back and join us again sometime in the future.
Yeah, love to, Dan. Thank you so much. And thanks for the kind words. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Peter. This has been fantastic. And thank you for listening to Quality Time with MoreSteam. You can email the show at qualitytime@moresteam.com. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast service. Also, please go ahead and visit our website, MoreSteam.com, to learn about the software and tools that can help you solve problems, eliminate waste, and do things better. We'll be back in 2 weeks with more Quality Time with MoreSteam. Thanks again.